Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World Series of Board Gaming's Designer Series, hosted on the Dice Tower. My name is Chris George.
And I'm Brian Muller.
Or, as our friends like to call us, Hellas.
And Elysium.
That's right. They do call us that. Don't call them up to check. We're continuing on our bit because we're continuing on our Designer Series here on the Dice Tower, interviewing a lot of the awesome designers that make this hobby possible. These designers are also affiliated with the World Series of Board Gaming because their games have been chosen to be in the series, and this is no different. Today we are interviewing Jacob Fryxelius, famed designer of Terraforming Mars. Maybe you've heard of it. I'm very excited to talk to him, but maybe not as excited as you are, Brian, because you're a pretty big space buff.
Yes, I am. I do. I love the history of a lot of the history of going to the moon and some of the trivia that goes along with that. I know I was prepping you beforehand on some trivia questions.
That's true.
I do enjoy that. And this game is great.
This
game is this is probably like one of the first auto includes. We're going to start here with this game in when we're making up the WSBG lineup because this game has that ability to really stretch all the edges and peripheries of all different types of gamers. For some reason, we have casual gamers that like this, co-op gamers that like this, war gamers that like this game, heavy, crunchy gamers. So many players in a play group, at least in my experience in the different play groups that I've been in, Terraforming Mars is an easy throwdown.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. What else can we say about it? There's a reason why it's number 6 on Board Game Geek, at least at the time of this filming. It was on my personal 5 desert island games. I could play this game over and over. So why don't we get to the man himself, Jacob Fryxelius, and make sure to stick around until the end because we're going to tell you how to win yourself a copy of Terraforming Mars if you don't have it. Or maybe something else, maybe another Fryxelius game. Who knows? Only time will tell. And if you are interested in participating in the World Series of Board Gaming, it happens in Vegas, September 24th to the 28th. You can get your tickets at WSBGvegas.com. It's going to be a blast. It's an awesome, open, warm environment. So don't be afraid of the competitive gaming aspect. Of course, we'll talk more about that at the end. Let's get over to Jacob right now. And here we are joined by Jacob Fryxelius. Jacob, thank you so much for jumping on the show. How are you doing this evening? It's evening for you there, right?
Yeah, it's 10 in the evening. Yeah, thank you for letting me on. It's an honor, and I look forward to a nice discussion.
Well, believe me, the honor is absolutely on this side of the camera.
No, not on this side.
We'll share it. Look at that.
All right.
Our most magnanimous and charming interview contestant already. And so what we've been doing with this designer series, and this is kind of how I've liked to start them, is I'd love to know a little bit about your design process, but more what got you into deciding to design a board game, to decide to design one of the biggest hits out there on BGG. Terraforming Mars is such a lovely, fun game, and I'd love to know sort of your history with design and what made you say, you know what, I think I want to pursue a career in the board gaming industry.
Well, let's just reflect on what you said. I never decided to design one of the most famous board games. If I did aspire to that, I have a friend that advised me that if you want to earn a lot of money, you should make children's games. And if I had done children's games, it would be horrible. I think I can't really make simple games.
Yeah.
So I think the starting point is to follow your heart in this matter, because in this industry, I think you need to have the heart in it, and if not, it's not for you.
Right.
For 2 reasons. One, of course, because you will not be inspired to do what you're doing, and second, you will most probably not earn a living in this industry. We were really lucky with this hit. And everything just fell into place. It still amazes us. It's such a blessing. It's incredible. you cannot count on any game. Even, I mean, if we made Terraforming Mars once again and released it, I think it would have a quite low chance of reaching the success it actually has reached. It's a lot of factors working together. So you can't really predict such successes. You can predict somewhat, should it be complete failure or should it be a moderate success? Yeah, maybe you can see such things, but this is on a completely different level. So
for sure.
So to come back to my history as a game designer, I grew up in a family of with a father who was a game designer. So he's actually a science teacher, and he designed games that he let us play, and they were more of a simulation kind of game.
Cool.
And I think maybe you can see a bit of that influence in Terraforming Mars. So the idea that a game is a simulation and depicting some aspects of reality is a bit of my background, but it also meant that we weren't afraid to turn our plays into games. For example, when I played with Legos, I invented rules for buying Lego bricks, and so if you wanted this brick, you had this, you had some kind of income, and then you can buy some bricks, and you can have stores and stuff like that. So it was really funny, and we made a lot of games when I grew up. But then it started when I was at the university, and I grew up with games like this, but I got into card games as I grew up and when I moved out. So, for example, one of the first influences for me was the Star Wars customizable card game, the old Star Wars game. And that is one of my biggest influences, actually, for several reasons. The first is that it was the first big hobby of mine in gaming. And the second, of course, it's Star Wars. It's even when it's bad, it's good.
Agreed.
And the next thing was I was impressed by the cards, because the cards were so different. They could depict anything from from a planet to a person, to a weapon, to a starship, to a group of starships, anything. So that really opened up my mind that card games, with cards, you can do anything, actually. So it's only a matter of how you portray different things and how you make a good game of it. And the other thing is they also used keywords, and that's a big inspiration in Terraforming Mars. We have tags instead of keywords. So it will be, you don't have to read the cards, but in the Star Wars, for example, you can have an event card that boosts your stormtroopers, and then you have the keyword stormtrooper somewhere in the text of every stormtrooper card in the game.
Right.
But that was a very indirect, it's a very, it's not a board game level of requirement in reading the cards. There's a lot of reading on those cards, and it's interesting, but it's not so available for the public, I think. So that was one in inspiration. Another part of this was that they have so many different cards, so extremely many different cards. And they didn't have a rule of 4. You could have actually a deck with only one type of card if you wanted to. And it would work, kind of. But it was so interesting because they really let the player decide everything in how to make their deck. And I really love that. And they also, I think, almost, well, in the end, there was quite a lot of power creep. But other than that, there were very, very, very few cards that there was no situation where they were good.
Right.
So even bad cards that nobody ever used, they did actually, you could conceive of a deck where that card could fit in a tournament. Although in some cases it was so fringe that it never happened, really. But
right. But the option was there.
The option was there,
yeah.
And I think that was a testament to that game strength in comparison to Magic, where you have the 1/1 creatures, and then you have 1/1 creatures with an ability. Okay, which one do you choose?
Yeah.
So I was really impressed with they kept this making every card could be useful, and they kept this principle for a very long time in that game. So that is a lot of my inspiration where I come from. And then when I moved out, I also made my own game. The first one was Space Station, and I remember I was in the university at Lund, in south of Sweden, and I thought I have just played Illuminati. You know, the game where you have these different organizations that are linked to each other. And I remember thinking that, that looks a little bit like a space station with different modules attached to each other. So let's do that. So that's my first game where you build modules on your space station. And that's Fryx Games' first released game as well, actually. And that's where it started, because we had another game in the family, plus this space station. And we were just happy game designers, and we didn't have any aspirations, really. But then my brother Enoch, who had an economy education, he doesn't make any games by himself, but he thought, well, my brothers make games and let's profit from their abilities. So he brought us together and said, hey, we should really try to make this work and form a company. So we did. And our first year, we came to the Essen Fair and had handmade editions of different things. And we got really good response and contacts with the factories and stuff like that. So next year we came back with actually printed games. And we did try to sell things to other publishers, but we were not as good at convincing others, I think. Or maybe they get approached by thousands of game designers every year. So in the end, they didn't pick up our games. So we picked them up ourselves and printed them and instead tried to make distribution. And of course, you can't live on that. But it was fun. It was fun, and the investment we made, if you don't count our time, the economy investment was, we got a little bit of return, not much, but a little.
That's still pretty great. Anytime.
It was. Yeah. It was really fun and really good. And then we were in the business, so we continued to make games. And I remember from maybe a month after this first Essen, I was on my way home from the commuter train, and I remember thinking to myself, I should make a game about Terraforming Mars. What should I call it? And I couldn't think of any other name, actually. So that's how it started. Most of my games, actually my other game, After the Virus, zombie deck builder, started in the same way. I should make a game about zombies. I just thought to myself one day, and so I did. So that's how this started. And that's also, with that thought, there comes some kind of idea of some kind of mechanism. What is my first instinctive thought here? For example, with Terraforming Mars, okay, there are parameters. If you terraform Mars, okay, there are certain things that need to be done. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, cards, of course. lots and lots of cards. So that's my background talking again. But since you can do anything with cards, it's a good place to start. So from the beginning, we didn't have any board. We didn't have any tiles. We didn't have any milestones and awards. We had some cards with cool names and stuff that happened, and we had paper with those parameters that you could push up. So that was the start of Terraforming Mars. So the design process is so far it has started with this idea. Okay, I should make this kind of game and this core idea for the game.
So sort of theme first.
Definitely.
The theme is what sparks it, and then it's figuring out mechanically, okay, how do we incorporate that?
Exactly. And that's an important part, that the mechanics actually reflect the theme. A lot of people maybe say that, Terraforming Mars is kind of a pasted on theme. Well, how do they know? Actually, it's not. Maybe you could transform it and do something else, but that would be pasted on. So just because you could make something else with the same mechanics doesn't mean that it's pasted on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have always found Terraforming Mars to be filled with theme. I feel like so much detail and effort has gone into creating and establishing that theme, from every single card to what they do and how they act.
Yeah. And that's the next step in the design process, I think. First of all, you need the theme, and then, okay, what's the core ideas for this game? And that can, of course, develop over time. So we play tested it and got some feedback and changed it. So I think the released version of Terraforming Mars was like the 15th iteration. And somewhere in the middle, we got the board in, and we had different kind of area. We didn't have hexagons from the start, for example. So there was a lot of different things. But somewhere along the way, you also need to recognize, what is this game's strength? What is the core selling point, like my brother wants to talk about? What's the selling point? What is the special thing about this game?
Right.
And in Terraforming Mars, we realized that, okay, we have a realistic game, in contrast to games where you have aliens and Star Trek and impossible technologies and far away future, often dystopian and so on. So we have actually kind of a very positive. Well, it wasn't so positive in the beginning. Actually, my brother Daniel made the first graphic design, and he has a very dystopian future kind of style. But we realized that, we want to appeal to a wider audience and actually have a positive future vision. So we changed the art direction with that. And also we worked very hard to make the game accessible. For example, by making tags and not keywords.
Yeah.
By having all the icons explained on each and every card, which of course limits what you can do. But it's so worth it to just allow players to see the cards instead of a glossary.
Yeah, it's huge for accessibility. That's one thing I've always loved about Terraforming Mars, is that you can give a new player and you say, hey, there's a lot of cards, but it says exactly what they do right on there.
Yeah, and that's also a quite big part of designing, I think, to have the graphic design work in tandem with the game intent. So for example, in this regard, our goal was to have icons and to have people following the icons. But we needed to explain it, because not all cards could follow the icons, and it was so many icons that, well, even if the icons, they didn't mean many different things actually. I mean, you have tiles, you have resources, and then just a few more icons. But still, it needs explanation. But the explanation needs to be so small that it doesn't take the focus on the card. The card should not be a wall of text, because then it's very difficult to just focus on the symbols, which we want, because that's very, very, very much quicker to parse the cards. So we needed to make the explanation text small, but not so small that it was actually very difficult to read. So actually it was a balancing act, which I'm so relieved that it worked out. If we had made it just a little bit smaller, it would be too small. A little bit bigger would have been too attention drawing on the cards. So that's just one of the details, which is to me very interesting. I didn't expect those kind of things to be so important in the game.
Yeah. So are there cards that maybe got cut because their text was too big?
Not cuts, they would be changed.
Okay.
We had, before we released the game, we had a lot of going through the cards and simplifying, asking, does it really need all these effects? So we cut down to make it more manageable for the player.
Cool. That idea of being so detailed specific is really, really interesting to me, and obvious, like that you care about the consumer, right? The player who's going to be utilizing this game. I'm curious, for this sort of design structure, do you go more in balancing and figuring out the balance between the cards and all the combos that chain together? Are you a spreadsheet? Are you pro spreadsheet or pro feeling it out?
I'm for feeling it out in the beginning,
and
then when it feels right, you spreadsheet.
Yeah.
To make sure everything is right, because you will have cards that are off.
Right.
And in retrospect, there are a few of our cards that are off also, but not by much actually. So we're very happy with it, but that's also because we did spreadsheets.
Right.
But I think you just need, you shouldn't spreadsheet the game too early, I think, because it's very good to have this variety, because then you can continue to toy with, okay, what if two cards have different power level, for example, okay, so what do I think is the appropriate power level for this game, for the cards in this game, or for the resources? Well, if I don't have actually tried both, maybe I won't know for sure. So I think it's better to go by ear from the beginning.
Right.
Just feel it out, try it, make modifications and so on, because you are going to make a lot of modifications along the way anyway.
Right.
So the spreadsheet is just wasted work until actually quite close to the end. You can have some spreadsheeting, of course, and we do have a formula for costing in Terraforming Mars, of course.
Yeah.
But there are so many cards that you can't apply the formula to, because you have, for example, when you have energy saving and you get energy production for each city in play. Okay, so how many cities do we expect the people will have in play?
Right.
When do we expect this card to be played? What will be par? And so on. And you can't have a formula for that. That would be a complete formula for every card that have that kind of ability. So we have to go by ear quite a lot, and of course testing a lot. And we're fortunate that we haven't grown tired of our own games, and we do have other testers as well.
So when you go about making expansions, do you try to balance to make sure that you're still balancing the proportionality of the tags that come out in your expansions? Does that handicap you at all? Or?
No, actually, almost all of the expansions were in the works when we released the game, and they were cut from the game because they had. We wanted to focus on the core theme for the base game. So all of the expansions are thematic. They have their own thematic area, and that's where we came from with what cards are in there. And then we did become more aware of that later on, the card distribution and type distribution. But basically the theme is there, and then, for example, Venus next. Okay, what can you do on Venus? And then we try to, okay, maybe we should have an animal card. Okay, what kind of animals would that be? So we make some of those, but most of the process is just brainstorming ideas for what to do on Venus, what to do with Venus, and so on. And the same with colonies and turmoil. What can we do in this setting? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different ideas, and we try to make the most of that. And then maybe, well, we haven't had any microbes yet. Why not? Why can't we have a plant project for Venus that we should have, and so on? But that's more like filling out the design space. It's not oftentimes it's not the first thing that comes to mind when designing an expansion. And I think it's not the most important, as long as you have a little bit for everyone. I think it should be okay. There are so many cards in the base game that shifting the distribution a little isn't so much. It's not too much of a problem. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I think it's actually the game is so set in its balance that actually we can't let card distributions go haywire too much either, especially at this point with several expansions. So the plant tags, for example, have been underrepresented in all of the expansions. So we are thinking about, in promo sets, for example, we are thinking about adding a few more of those. But the problem there is thematically, we have already thought about the plans for projects, so it's not so much more to be said about it. But on the other hand, you can come up with things, so it's not actually a problem with inventing new cards. But fitting them in a set where you have a different purpose is sometimes difficult.
Mm-hmm. And that brings up a question that I wanted to ask too, in terms of, because I think, well, the result of Terraforming Mars being such like a hit, obviously the demand for more and more has been there. But in terms of when putting out a new expansion or veering towards that promo card set, and Terraforming Mars has a significant amount of promo cards, I feel. What's the distinction between those two things, and how do they come about? Do some promo cards? I feel like some promo cards are for promotional purposes, right? For an event or for something. But what does that look like from a design standpoint of creating it? Because you don't want these things to be overpowered as well. And do you get a little bit more play with those promo cards that you may not be able to throw into an existing set or an upcoming expansion, rather?
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret.
Here we go. The first secret.
All right. I had an expansion that has never been released, and that is actually just a waste bin for all the cards that we cut from when we make an expansion or when we make the base game and so on. Yeah. So actually, it's just every card idea that hasn't found its place yet.
Right.
So we've had quite a few cards and corporations being in there, and sometimes they get played a little when we play. We have them in the mix, so they do get a little bit of attention. But we also, I think, for the promo cards, some of them come from there. Right. And some of the cards in the expansions also come from there. But actually, most of the promo cards were made on demand, so to speak.
Cool.
The first ones, the first four, they were definitely for promotional purpose. We wanted them to be handouts when we sold the game to people and so on, and in magazines, and our partners should have them also. Mm-hmm. Then we got into Kickstarter together with Stronghold Games, and they have this model to have 17-day campaigns and daily reveals.
Right.
So they insisted, okay, we should have a promo pack with every Kickstarter, and it should be at least 17 cards to keep the interest high in throughout the campaign. And we said, okay, I think maybe you know best in this area, so okay, let's make a promo pack, and of course we want some corporations, and we want some cool project cards as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first Kickstarter was for the Terminal Kickstarter, and so of course we want a little bit of theme for that expansion. So we made the cross expansion global events in that promo pack. Plus, I think maybe one of the corporations there is extra suitable for Terminal expansion, but otherwise it was just throw in some cool cards. Basically,
Cool.
For the big box, it was a lot freer. So we thought, well, I did have some cards in this waste bin with the asteroid theme. So I wanted to collect them in one place, and then I made a few more, and we made a corporation with the asteroid theme as well. So it's mostly like made on demand type of thing. We need these promos. Jacob, come up with something, and I say,
"You're on the clock."
My pleasure.
but that's cool that they kind of come from the vault, right? Like it's the list of ideas that you've been working on, and say, okay, maybe this one will work. This one will work.
Yeah, but also the reason they got cut could be twofold. One, they didn't have any space, and two, they didn't feel finished in their mechanics yet.
Right.
So, for example, this Prelude 2 that we are working on and want to release on Kickstarter this autumn. A few of those corporations, a few of those corporations are from this category that were cut before. And we have worked more on them, got more feedback, tried a lot of different versions on some of them. So it's, we're starting to be very happy with them now. Cool. But sometimes it's very difficult to make a corporation work the way you want. Designing a corporation is not trivial.
Yeah.
It needs to be very well balanced, and it needs to be interesting throughout the game without being too fiddly. And it also needs to change how you view different cards or how you play the game. So it's a lot you want to achieve with each corporation, and it's very easy to make them uninteresting. I think, for example, one of the corporations that I don't like so much is Terractor. I do like it though, but it's very simple. I mean, you have a discount for Earth tags. Okay, so you'll play Earth tags.
Yeah.
That's basically it. It doesn't. It does have a lot of money, so that there's that. But there are other corporations that really change the way you play and the way you view the game, and those are really enriching the game, in my view.
I really like the promo card, the merger card that lets you kind of merge two corporations together. It's like one of our favorite ways to play the game is that everybody gets that as one of their Prelude card options.
Yeah.
And I played Terractor just the other night, merged with another company, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And especially if you draw double down also. And then you play 3 corporations. And it sounds really overpowered. It's not actually. It's very difficult to find corporations that synergize heavily. There are a few combinations that are really good, but most often they are not making the other corporation better in a substantial way. But it's just so cool.
Yeah.
But that's actually an idea from the fan base. They had this similar idea that you can have play with two corporations. So I looked at that and fun idea. I wouldn't do it that way. And then when we needed some more Prelude cards, it was ready to go.
Nice. That's cool that it kind of also was from the fan base as well. Do you, especially with the popularity of Terraforming Mars, do you take any inspiration from fan designs? I'm sure there must be a ton of different fan content out there. I assume there would be, just based upon the popularity. Yeah,
there is a lot of fan base material. I have looked a little bit about it, on it, but it's not too much.
Yeah,
I want to keep my own ideas because,
that makes sense.
There is a certain design space in Terraforming Mars, and as long as you keep inside that design space, there is only so much you can do. So it's not fun to make a card if I've seen it as some fan has already made a very, very similar card.
Yeah.
Then it's not fun for me. But if I come up with it myself and then I realize, they have made almost identical, well, what do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's bound to come up sooner or later. We had this corporation design contest in the early years on Board Game Geek, and we had 300 entries.
That's
and
a lot of corporations.
There were like 20 of them that had a card. Action draw a card. It's such an obvious thing. So
right.
I think. I have looked at the fan-made material a bit, but I don't want to delve too much into it because I want to keep my own creativity process to myself, actually.
Yeah.
And then, but we have picked up these neoprene mats because there was quite a lot of demand for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really happy about the fan base.
Yeah,
they do enrich the game, and a little bit we have picked up as well.
Yeah. How do you feel about? I was just thinking about the fan base and things that fans have done. I've seen a few people do dual games of Ark Nova and Terraforming Mars beside each other. Like you're developing the world and playing. I think they play them simultaneously. I don't think there's any crossover to them, because that would feel like it would be a hard merger to make. That the merger card wouldn't be able to create. But that's the sort of noticeable fan mode that I've seen out there of like the Giga Earth, or maybe there's one where like you put 4 Terraforming Mars boards together. I don't know. People can do.
There is a Giga map.
Yeah, there's the Giga map.
Yeah, where you have the whole of Mars, the map goes around, and you have double the parameters.
Oh,
so people play that for 8 hours, and
so they can
have a good time.
So I
haven't done that myself though.
They don't like hitting the point where their engine is just taking off. They want their engine to really run dry and then feel good. Yeah, that's funny.
Well, Terraforming Mars is becoming more than just the game and expansions, but it's becoming a bigger brand. You have the Ares expedition, and also too we at the last World Series board game, we actually got to see some samples of the dice game that was.
Yeah.
So, how did that all come about?
When we started making games, we have all these ideas. Like I said, we had ideas for Venus, Colonies, and Turmoil. All these were in the planning stages when we released the base game. But it's because of the success of the game that we could realize and do these things. And then people started asking for more, and some people thought that Race for the Galaxy is a really cool game, and they compared Terraforming Mars to Race for the Galaxy. So that was we got approached by Stronghold Games, and they said, well, we have this idea how you could merge these two games, basically. So that's their contribution to this, and that is, of course, an IP, but it's also a different version of Terraforming Mars. You have the same cards, you have the same tags, you have a lot of the same economy, but a different turn structure. So yeah, we had a lot of interest, and that's what's allowed us to continue to do expansions, to do the more maps and big box and so on. So the interest from the public in the game has, of course, allowed us to do a lot of the things that we really wanted to do, because we love this game and this theme. And then other people approach us. For example, Stephen Bonacore, I think after the first or second year of Terraforming Mars, he came to us and said, we should do a dice game as well, and the roll and write. And we said, just, we'll do what we get inspired to do, I think.
Yeah.
And we weren't really inspired to do that for a while. But then my brother Jonathan, well, he gave a go at it and made a dice game version, and we didn't like it. So Daniel made a version. We liked that better. So then me and Daniel worked on that game, and that's well, the whole team worked on it, of course, but me and Daniel were the I think main designers there, and that's finished, and it's being printed right now, so it should be shipping quite soon.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you mentioned your brothers. You come from a large family, correct?
Yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
More. So give me a number and I'll say more.
Well, I think Brian said somewhere along the lines. I would not have guessed this number if Brian hadn't told me earlier. Around 13 or 14. More than that. Then it's more. I thought I had it.
Yeah. I have 15 siblings, so we are 16.
Oh wow, amazing! Yeah. And you seem like a very close knit family, and so many of you have been working on various projects. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about your various siblings and how they're involved?
Yeah. So I blame my parents, first of all, because my father made games and made us play. So he got us into this mess. And my mother is incorrigible. You know, she sets traps. So now that they don't have kids to raise anymore, she sets traps. She makes the setup for a Terraforming Mars game in the kitchen. And then when someone comes along, she's, well, welcome into the kitchen.
There's the game.
And it's just ready to go.
That's amazing.
Okay. So about us, Enoch is the CEO and the economy guy in the Fryx Games, and me, Daniel, and Jonathan are game designers. Daniel is a fantastic artist as well, and he makes 3D models and sculptures and stuff like that. So he made the 3D tiles for the big box, for example.
Cool.
Jonathan is computer whiz, so he's actually making computer games also. We haven't released those yet, but so he's in charge of the web shop and the website. Isaac is the graphic designer for Terraforming Mars, and he also handles a lot of the file work with the factories and the translations.
Cool.
I get to just do Terraforming Mars and whatever I want, more or less. But we all work on all the projects.
Yeah.
So when we work on, for example, Angel Fury last year, we all chipped in. Daniel made the 3D sculptures, and it's actually his game. Isaac made some of the artwork and the box front. I made the solo version. Enoch sold it to partners and so on. So it's really a team effort, and we all have we all play it with our respective gaming groups and discuss feedback and balancing and all those kind of things. So all the games in Fryx Games are a joint effort. So there's no, but you also have a main designer. But it's definitely a team effort driven by the main designer, you could say. Right. So that's the overview, I think, of our different roles in Fryx Games. But then we have other siblings as well. So, for example, one of our first games, Wilderness, was designed by Daniel, but also his twin brother Thomas, who is not in the company. And we released Brawling Barons, which was a cooperation between Jonathan and Benjamin, who is not in the company. And a lot of other siblings are also joining some of the playtesting.
Cool.
And my big brother has made a few games of his own, but we haven't released any of those yet. We have a problem because we have so many ideas. So many things to release, but we don't have the resources to finish them. There's a lot of work to play test and modify and do the graphic design. And oftentimes we realize we think, well, this game is really fun. We want to release it, and then we look closer, and we realize, okay. But if we want to release it, we do have to make it the best it can be. And then it's a whole other year of work or more. So it's in the early days, it was just happy times. We make a fun game. We throw it together and release it. It's fun. But now we have this ambition to make really, really good games.
Mm-hmm. And that's all under the umbrella of Fryx Games, correct?
Yes.
And then, so how, for the people wondering at home, because Stronghold has helped with Terraforming Mars, but Fryx Games still publishes things on their own, right? There's more of a distinction than. Yeah,
we're different companies. Yeah. Actually, we license. We don't license Terraforming Mars to anyone, I think. Well. Right. So actually, Stronghold Games buy their games from us. We have an arrangement. They have. We have 25 different partners for Terraforming Mars. So we sell games. We sell the games to them, and they pay us, and then they sell them in their respective markets.
Cool.
And it's a bit similar, but with Stronghold Games, but it's more of a cooperation in the management, in the business part of it. Mm-hmm. But we are the developers of the Terraforming Mars content.
The developers, designer, developer, and owning the IP, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they couldn't release without our approving,
right?
For example, but we did approve Ares Expedition, which they developed. So they actually, I asked them, "Are you giving us this game so we can sell it to you, so you can sell it to customers?" And basically, yeah. So and that worked quite fine, I think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because the Ares Expedition, they took some aspect of Terraforming Mars and improved the downtime aspect, for example, and made a different this action selection thing. And some people really love that focus. And then we made the dice game, which focuses a lot more on the board play, have tiles and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny that if you take the dice game and add Ares Expedition, you get the original game more or less. So they complement each other really well, I think.
That's funny.
Nice.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about After the Virus, because I've heard of After the Virus a lot from my friends who play primarily solo games. I feel like the solo community really enjoys that a lot. And Terraforming Mars does have like a robust solo mode as well.
Yeah.
What was the? I know you said, "Oh, I'll design a game about zombies." It's still card driven, but this one is cooperative, right? As opposed to, and I think that's probably why solo works, because I feel generally co-op and solo they go hand in hand sometimes. What was that process like, and do you prefer developing cooperative or like solo style or competitive, or how did that feel different from Terraforming Mars? Because I know you've supported it as well. An expansion came out for it. I was looking up on Board Game Geek. I was like, oh, I didn't know an expansion came out last year in 2022. At least it's listed on BGG.
And it sold out in a week in Spain.
Wow.
Yeah. We only have a few languages for After the Virus, so it's actually in English, of course, and then we have German, Spanish, and Hungarian.
Cool.
So it's not nearly as big as Terraforming Mars, but it's cool to have different languages there as well.
Yeah.
But After the Virus started as a solo game, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I got into solo gaming after I during the time we developed Terraforming Mars, just because it's very easy to make everyone gather when you have a solo game.
Right.
It's just sitting down and you have all the company you need for the solo game.
You don't have to organize too many schedules.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be difficult to meet people enough. So it sometimes makes sense just to. You do make a lot of the design process starts solo.
Right.
Yeah, you play with yourself and maybe you simulate more players, but sometimes you just want to play around with the mechanics. And it started with a solo game. So I had this deck, and you have played it, right?
I've read the rule book, and I have friends who have played it, but I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet. But I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the main idea is that you have a deck. And like a deck builder, you have the same kind of ingredient that Dominion, that you get more cards. But the difference here is that each time you reshuffle, you get more and more zombies in your deck. And when you draw cards, some of them might be zombies, which means that you have less cards on your own. And you also have to deal with the zombies.
Yeah.
So the longer the game goes, the tougher it will become.
That's what I love. I think that's really cool. That's a really neat, exciting concept that I can't point to another game that has employed it. At least, certainly not right now.
I think there are a couple. I think.
Yeah.
It's I can't pinpoint them right now in my mind. But I didn't think of any other game when I designed this. Except Dominion, of course, because I do have the rule that you draw 5 cards and you can't end the turn with cards in your hand. So there's that. But I wanted to. The basic idea here is that I wanted the zombie theme. The zombie theme is that you have an ever-increasing pressure from the zombies. So that the game should create this kind of desperation. You really need to be on your toes and do your things. It should not be a cakewalk. So we wanted more and more zombies, but we also wanted the game mechanics to be thematic. So, for example, unlike in Dominion, you can keep cards in your play area. You don't have to discard your weapon and then draw zombie cards after that. Why would you do that? So it's a lot more that you have this, both the deck building but also have a tableau where you have cards sometimes permanently and sometimes intermittently before you discard them for different effects. So you have this tension of, because you add zombies in your deck, you want as many good cards in your deck as possible to dilute the zombies. Otherwise the zombies will come faster. And also the shuffles will come faster, which means even more zombies.
Right.
So you have a really, really big incentive to get more cards in your deck. Any cards. It doesn't matter if they are good or bad. Every card in your deck is good.
Yeah.
Because you can use them as payment as well for different effects. So no card is useless. But you also need cards in play that can deal with zombies, because sooner or later, if you play for a while, sooner or later you may have a hand of 5 zombie cards and no cards of your own.
Right.
So what are you going to do? You have to have some protection on the table. And in that case, sometimes you are really happy that you're not playing solo, but you have a friend that can cover your back. Or you're really happy to have the first card I designed for the game, which is the chainsaw, which can kill. It can have it in play, and it can kill 6 zombies. So that can be a real lifesaver in those situations.
Yeah.
So you have this tension about having enough defense, but also trying to have as much as possible in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really happy about that balance, and it's there is a few similarities with Terraforming Mars. Of course, it's a card game. You do have combos. The combos in Terraforming Mars were very much about the tags and other aspects of the game. And in After the Virus, you have tags and card types which trigger off the different combos. But the main point here, I would say, is that both games have a suitable design space. And the design space is created by what elements are in the game. In Terraforming Mars, you have 6 different standard resources, but you can also have other resources. You have a lot of different tags, and you have a few different types of tiles. And you have terraform rating, you have the parameters, and so on. So you have these different things that you can play around with. And you have to have enough in order to simulate what you want to simulate. But it also determines how much you can do in that design space. So you have that there, and you have a similar thing in After the Virus. You have persons, you have weapons, you have the zombies, and so on. So you have different costs of the cards and things like that. Yeah.
Now, in terms of, I know our time is kind of running short. I don't want to keep you too long, but
for me it's okay. No problem. I can keep on an hour more.
Amazing.
And then you can cut everything out again, so it's fine.
Well, I'll still be trying to be a bit respectful of your time, but I am really curious about juggling the design implications and the design pressures of, or if there are pressures of existing in the Terraforming Mars space and then branching out onto other projects. Do you find that it's tough to balance those, or is it refreshing to step away from Terraforming Mars from time to time, or do you just like playing in the Terraforming Mars sandbox that you don't mind, or perhaps you get enough development with all of your other siblings projects that also satiates that feeling as well?
I think I'm pretty lucky because I do like Terraforming Mars. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind continue to play it and develop it. Yeah. Especially because I develop it, I can make up new things all the time,
right?
Which keeps it fresh. But I do like having playing and developing other games as well. And as you said, my siblings do make games, and we play them and give feedback, and they're all good games. So we have more than enough fun to play and develop. So it's no problem at all. No boring games to develop. But I would like to come back to After the Virus, because it started as a solo game, but actually we made it a multiplayer game then.
Yeah.
So it's actually from 1 to 3 players. Mm-hmm. And you can tell from the game that it began as a solo game, because everyone keeps their deck separate from each other, so you don't mix the cards.
Right.
And you don't interact very much either. It's very limited interaction. The only thing you interact with is that you keep the same pace. You have to be on the same turn, and you can deal with each other's zombies, and you need to fulfill the mission at the same time as the other players. So you have to coordinate when to go for the win, and cover each other's backs, and to say things like, hey, I can do a really good turn if you can just help me out with these 2 zombies.
Yeah.
And or can I take care of those zombies? I need to discard my weapons because I'm going to reshuffle now. Stuff like that. So actually there is mechanically, it's very limited interaction between the players, but the impact is very good.
Mm-hmm. It feels significant, even just those examples that you just gave.
Yeah. And we're thinking about having it as a 4-player game, and we tried that, but it was just a mess on the table. Because each player has a lot of cards, and it was just impossible to keep track of who has what. And it also became very difficult to keep track that everyone was on the same turn, because one player may, I've done everything I want to do,
right,
and then some players start to draw cards for the next turn, and then suddenly you have every player has card in their hand, but it's not on the same turn anymore. So that was we reached the conclusion. Technically it's possible to have 4 players, but the game very easily becomes a mess.
Yeah.
So we're limited to 3 players.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, that makes sense in terms of being in terms of care of player count, right?
Yeah.
Another question I had in terms of part of the design process is, do you ever have to consider, we talked to a few designers who said they were considering this, do you ever consider how much the retail price is going to be for an expansion, and does that ever limit your design? Right, you wanted this expansion to be $30 or $40, and you had components for $60 and have to cut down in that way, or do you just sort of make what you make and then let Enoch take care of the business side of things?
I think it doesn't affect the design of our expansions. I think.
Cool.
I think we do well, not much anyway. We do have ideas. We follow those ideas, and we develop those ideas. And then, of course, at some point, we say, we want to release this. How can we do that? And that's when that question comes into play.
Right.
And mostly, it's about what components you need and what type of components you use for that. So should you use plastic? Should you use cardboard? Should you use meeples and stuff like that? That can really affect the pricing. How many cards should there be, and so on. So of course those concerns come in when we release product. But basically, we want to develop a product that we ourselves are happy to play and to sell to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's rather that we have a lot of ideas, and we have more ideas than we can release, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just picking, what can we make a good product here?
Right.
So if I have developed, say, 6 characters for After the Virus, and we want to make an expansion, let's have 4 characters.
Right.
Let's do it the same as the base game. We don't need so much more. And then we can just cherry pick, which are the 4 best ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 that didn't get picked, maybe we can do something at another time with them, maybe as a promotional material or free for download or something like that.
Cool.
And cool. Sometimes you can cut some parts if they turn out to be too expensive to produce. Or you can just adjust them so they are manageable cost-wise. And sometimes you just have to accept that, this product, we really want to do it, we love this game, and we're just accepting, we'll not make much money on this product, but we are proud of it anyway, and we want to release it.
It's worth it just to get it out to the public, and
and this was, you never know how well a game is going to go. So, of course, if a game is a big success, that changes everything. But until it is, it's a very conservative estimation.
Right.
So, for example, Angel Fury that we released last year is our biggest and most beautiful game yet. 100 angels battling 100 demons.
Cool.
Lots of plastic, really epic. But it's very expensive to produce, very expensive. Right. And therefore we have to have a high price.
Yeah.
And the business model also comes into this, because if we only went on Kickstarter, we could have then the pricing is not as big of a problem, because you have most of the margins by yourself.
Yeah.
But then you're also only producing like 1,000 or 2,000 copies and not more.
Right.
And it's impossible to sell via distribution. But we have a lot of partners, and we do want to sell to distribution. And if we can get partners on board, then we can print 10,000 instead of 2,000.
Right.
Which brings the pricing down as well. But then we also have to have the price of the product high enough that people in the distribution chain can also make money on the game.
Right.
So it's a very expensive game.
Right.
A game within a game.
It is very expensive, and that means that we cannot sell it. It will never be a big seller, because it's too expensive for many people.
Yeah.
There was a point I was coming to with this, what we were talking about before.
Oh, just in
the
part of the design process. Yeah,
we wanted to release this game anyway, even though our margin to our partners is actually we made a little bit of a miscalculation. I'm not sure if this should be in the final cut here, but
you let me know.
So actually, we make almost nothing on the games we sell to our partners with Angel Fury. When we sell it ourselves, we have a good margin.
Yeah.
But the margins were so small to our partners that an additional cost just ate up most of it.
Wouldn't make sense, yeah.
But still, it's a really good game, and it's out there. And I hope it's doing well. We don't sell very, very much of it, but sometimes a game can pick up steam later as well. Like After the Virus, for example, it's picking up steam this last year a bit.
Do you think the release of the new expansion had anything to do with that?
It was before. Actually, After the Virus is a funny thing. Most games release and they sell quite well for 2 years, and then they are dead, more or less.
Because everybody who's wanted a copy got one.
No, because they released 1,000 new games in the meantime.
Right. Yeah.
People move on to the new things.
The new shiny. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the game doesn't sell, well, Terraforming Mars is a different thing. But most games are basically dead after a year or two. But After the Virus never was a big success in the beginning. But it hasn't really diminished so much either. So it's continuing on this low level, not very low, but it's funny how it can go with different games.
Cool.
And if it hadn't, then we wouldn't have made this expansion, I think.
Right.
Even though we did have ideas for it, because what we release is also, of course, a calculation of what can bear its own costs.
Right. In terms of it's really great that it's really cool that you're so involved, that Fryx Games is its own entity, and like you all take a role and are so involved. I know a lot of designers aren't as involved with the sort of the economics behind it and behind the selling, right? It's more of a just sort of design process. With that knowledge, what would be your sort of advice to anybody who's considering getting into board game design? I know we talked a little bit about it at the beginning, saying if you're looking to be rich, go in the children's toys and the children's games. But any other advice for sort of budding designers, and in terms of people who might be taking that Kickstarter route and self-publishing?
Yeah. Most people who live on the industry are doing things. They are not designers. There are some, of course, some designers who can live on it, but in the whole world, it's not a big bunch. So yeah, first of all, if you want to be a game designer, don't do it for the money, because you will probably not get rich. Do it for fun, because then you're winning however it goes. Do it because it's fun,
right?
Then you can't lose. That's the basic one, and then to the different ways you can do it. If you are just a single person, then I think approaching a publisher, I think, is the only way to do it. And they will say either, yeah, we're not interested, or they will say, yeah, but we want to make this instead.
Right.
So even if you have a great game, they might want to, yeah, we want to make this about Captain Universe instead, or we want to make this about zombies instead, or we want this mechanics,
right,
and so on. So most probably they will want to change your game in one aspect or another. But if you can stomach that, that's the best way. And it's the easiest way, because you only have to get this nice idea, and you have to. The trickiest part is just to release control to the publisher,
right?
Because very few publishers, I think, would accept a project where they don't decide on these things themselves.
Yeah, and develop it a bit further.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's for single designers. I think that's the best. If you have a network of friends that have artistic skills, then I think Kickstarter is another way to go. Kickstarter is quite amazing. It's allowing basically anyone to release anything.
Yeah.
Which is both good and bad. It's good because everyone can actually have this opportunity. So it's amazing. But it also means that the people who aren't very people can release games that maybe look good, but are not actually very good games. After all, which means that the market is full of beautiful games that are not actually so much worth playing. Which makes it very difficult for other. Yeah, it's. I mean, 1,000 new games each year. How are you going to get noticed in that mess? Yeah. But Kickstarter is very good, and that also gives you an idea of how many copies can we make and sell and so on. And it's Kickstarter is amazing in several respects.
Yeah.
If you have a brother who has an economic education and brothers who can make artwork, then you can make your own company and do whatever you like. That's what we did. We did try to sell our ideas at first, and in retrospect, we are really happy that people didn't pick them up. It was hard work for many years for us, and still is hard work, but in the end, it has paid off beautifully.
Cool. Well,
but that requires that you actually have a team that can work together for several years.
Yeah.
Do it for fun and not for money. I mean, we didn't have any salaries until long after Terraforming Mars.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's some lovely insight. To finish us off, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So to finish us off, I always like to ask this question. Who are, other than yourself, and I'll lump your brothers into the mix as well. Do you have any other sort of favorite games that you end up playing, or favorite designers that you enjoy playing, or is it it could all just be too much time developing Fryx Games as well, which
it is too much time developing Fryx Games. Unfortunately, I don't have time to play so many other games.
Yeah,
but there are a lot of other beautiful and nice games. I've played, for example, is it The Lost Expedition? where you play these cards and you're going through the jungle, and there's mosquitoes and crocodiles and everything. I like survival games. I like these thematic games. So that's a cool one. Cool. I really liked Imperial, although it's been years since I played it. You know, the diplomacy-like game where you buy the different countries and you're not actually a country yourself. That's so interesting twist.
Yeah.
I like the Quest for El Dorado. I like Spirit Island, but it's a very heavy game. A bit on the almost too heavy for me. But I think it's really, really, really interesting.
Cool. Yeah, that's those are pretty. Yeah, Spirit Island for me, the asymmetry is always so fun, but I do not know what anybody else is doing at the table because I just have so much to worry about on my own self.
Yeah, actually, I think for me it's I have played it solo a couple of times, but it's almost too heavy for me solo. But I did play it with a friend who had it and knew the game better. And that was so much easier because then he could help me along a little bit, help me notice what should we do, what are the threats now, and so on.
Yeah.
That helped a lot.
Cool. Well, that's awesome, Jacob. Thank you again so much for your time. For the rest of you listening at home, stay tuned because Brian and we're going to give you a chance to win a copy of Terraforming Mars. We're doing that with all of our designer giveaways. We want to give away a copy of Terraforming Mars. And you know what? If you already have a copy of Terraforming Mars, we'll track down a copy of After the Virus for you as well. So that can be the prize as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. Jacob, again, thank you so much for your time. If you happen to be free September 24th to the 28th, you can feel free to come down. You got an open invitation to come to Vegas and play either in the World Series of Board Gaming, Terraforming Mars, or not, or just in the Outer Ring area. I know your schedule is probably slammed, so I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but I just wanted to extend the offer 100% to you. You know, maybe we'll make it happen at some point.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Anyway, thank you again, Jacob.
Thank you.
And Brian and I will tell you all about the giveaway right now. Well, that wraps up our interview with Jacob Fryxelius. Although I'll tell you, we should have kept the cameras rolling because he's just such an awesome guy that Brian and we kind of just hung out with him for another hour and a half after the interview.
Amazing. And some of the stuff he was telling us, I wish we could spoil all of the little tidbits that he gives us.
That's true. Yeah.
But we can spoil some of it.
We can spoil some. Yeah. We said we pried him for your benefit. We said, hey, give us all the juicy gossip on what's happening next for Fryx Games. And so what are the things that we are allowed to say, Brian? I know you wrote them down specifically.
Maybe some people saw me taking some copious notes as we went along there, but my paper is filled with chicken scratch all over the place. But the things that I most remember is most people probably have heard of the Prelude 2 that's going to come out. And if you were following us at WSBG when we were doing live feeds, we showed maybe even some shots of the Terraforming Mars, the dice game, which was being like post-beta tested out there at WSBG, which is super cool. But then there's at least two projects. One we can hint at a lot, and one we can hint at just a little bit. So the first one I think that we can hint at a lot. It doesn't have an official name yet, but there are some code names to it. And one of the code names which they're thinking about, I think, is Fate. I think we're allowed to say that it might have that project code name.
Yeah.
But he's doing with some of his other family members. I believe his sister, he said, was
I think his brother.
And his brother.
The whole family.
Well, he's got a bunch of them. Yeah. A Vikings-themed game.
Yeah.
Which is going to be like a tower defense game. And just he went into extra steps about how he goes through the game design, and he notices this thing and tweaks this thing. That extra long conversation was just
it was friggin' really cool. Like we just talked about Terraforming Mars. We talked about all the Easter eggs that are in
Yes,
Terraforming
the
Mars,
Easter eggs.
which if you don't know, there's a whole like blog post about them
yes,
over on Fryx Games, their
and he's
website.
got a spreadsheet with Easter eggs in them, and we got to see a little bit of that. It was crazy. I'm like, oh, that's super cool. And then when he was talking about, so some people know that like up on Fryx Games on the online site, they have some extra stuff that they sell that's Terraforming Mars brand related. So like he sells some mugs, and he was saying that you know, those are good and bad for him. And then he talks also too about the puzzles, which I think are super cool, and that there's Easter eggs in the puzzles. So go get a puzzle and see if you can figure out the Easter eggs. And I'll give you a hint at least one of them. There's something slightly different because there's something else coming beyond Prelude. And that's about all we can say, but it's amazing.
Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, he didn't, to be clear, he didn't reveal all of his secrets to us, even though we pried him as much as we could. We're operating pretty much at the knowledge that you are, but yeah, we're just really excited about it. And what I also loved about those puzzles over at fryxgames.se, I think that's the site. Let me just double check. It is fryxgames.se. What I loved about the puzzles is he said, listen, we legitimately just made it for us because we also really love puzzles. So we just wanted to have some cool Terraforming Mars puzzles, so we made them. And we're like, hey, anybody else can buy them, but those were pretty much just for us, which I think is just so lovely, and it kind of speaks to just the genuine nature of Jacob. And like,
it's so good.
Yeah, it was just so lovely hanging out with him, so lovely to meet him.
Yes. And also, we don't know when this is going to drop, so I may send this out on my, not very many people follow me on Facebook, but for the few people who do, I'll probably send this out on my feed that he's going to be at Gen Con, right? And from my gathering between him and talking to Sydney, that it's probably going to be Stronghold related. And
he'll be at the Stronghold booth, I think he said.
And he gave us a very genuine invite to come out there, which we're kind of extending that to other people via us to go out there and say hi. Say you listen to the WSBG Designer Institute and ask him when you go out there, ask him about the Terraforming Mars books. Because there's some books related to Terraforming Mars, and he was talking to us off camera a bit about that, and it really does sound super cool.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that there were so many other like extra things, and like he's building out this sort of Terraforming Mars world. So if you like the idea of the Terraforming Mars world, and you want to get into some like nice books, I think there's a couple also on the web store as well. You should check out Fryx Games. Seriously, shout out to fryxgames.se. Go check out their web store. They got a bunch of fun Terraforming Mars stuff. And it was just really cool to talk about them. But before we do get to the giveaway where you can win yourself a copy of Terraforming Mars or After the Virus, there is one thing that I want to talk about. One little Easter egg, the coolest Easter egg that I thought is in one of the cards. The photo of that card is actually a photo that Jacob took of the university where Jacob took his PhD. And I think that's so cool. He said he took it from a balloon. And I just love that so much. I think it was the development centers or something along those lines. That be on the lookout for that card next time you're playing Terraforming Mars for sure.
Super cool. Super cool. So this is probably when I got so excited during this interview, about 20 seconds into it, because he immediately started about one of the games that I cut my teeth on and that made me a competitive gamer. So I'm still competitive in my play group, but I some of the competitive edges worn out. But I used to play the Star Wars TCG.
Yeah. Okay?
I used to play that very competitively, used to travel all around playing that competitively. And they actually had a few games that was a Decipher game. They had a few games that came after that, where I competed at the world's level. In Jedi Knights, I finished 4th in the world at Jedi Knights.
Cool.
I did make it to the second day of Worlds in the Star Wars game. I played the Lord of the Rings game at the second day of Worlds game, and they had this little game that didn't last long. It was very niche, had a small following, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But it's called Jedi Knights, and they used those audio photo cards, stereophonic cards, where you can put two cards together, and they kind of look through them with a set of glasses, and they look like a 3D image to you. So that was pretty cool. But that game was called Jedi Knights, and I actually won the world championship for that game. So
what? No way! Yes. See, I never knew this about you, Brian.
Yes,
you got world champion in your blood.
I don't necessarily tell it to everybody, but that's my 5 minutes of fame came from winning that event. So
Well, hey, I know a way that all of our viewers can feel that same rush, and that's by attending the World Series of Board Gaming happening in Vegas, September 24th to the 28th. You can get your tickets at WSBGVegas.com and come down and win yourself a World Championship ring. Did you win a ring? Anything like the rings to the World Series?
I actually have, in the background here, you can kind of see it here. I actually keep my medal here.
Oh,
got my medal here that I won, so which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That's a pretty cool medal. I mean, you know, it's no $2,000 ring encrusted with diamonds, but you know, it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. It's still pretty cool.
If you come out to WSBG and you see me, grab me, and I'll tell you the story of the amazing road that I had to, if you really want to know.
Yeah,
the crazy road that I had to go to get to that event was amazing. So
awesome. And with that, we got to tell you about the giveaway, and it's very simple. It's, if you've been watching this designer series, it's pretty much the same as all the other ones. Drop down in the comments below and tell us what your favorite Fryx Games title is. I'd say that would be pretty good. Or tell us what your favorite card in Terraforming Mars is and why. Yeah, I like that. Either of those, you'll be eligible to win a copy of Terraforming Mars. And if you already have Terraforming Mars, well, guess what? We're going to track down a copy of After the Virus for you to make it a booming success. Other than that, we'll let you go. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to keep tuning in to the Dice Tower for more of this designer series, more of these interviews, and also for streaming coverage of WSBG come September. But until then, do you got anything else to say, Brian?
No, I just can't wait for all that stuff. I can't wait for whatever's next as well. We're just having a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see you next time. Again, my name is Chris George.
And I'm Brian Muller.
And thanks for watching, or as we say at WSBG, get in the game.